It's time to begin. Welcome everybody to Mapbox Unboxed. Today we have the Riders Edition, so we're talking about design for the future of transportation. We have a great group of people here joining us in Helsinki, and we're broadcasting live from Helsinki. But if you're joining us on the YouTube stream, welcome as well. Great to have you here, and I want to remind you to subscribe to the channel and follow us on LinkedIn and follow Mapbox on LinkedIn and Twitter. Also, drop some comments into the video, and we will go through those at the end of the program. We'll work with Charlie and our guests to get some answers and get a good discussion going on there. But let's talk about the agenda. So we have, as I mentioned, we have some great guests today. My name is Will White. We have Charlie joining us, Charlie Prather from Tier Mobility. He's the product design lead at Tier. We're going to talk through some of the design challenges that they are overcoming and obstacles that they're working around at Tier Mobility to bring these great scooters and bikes and other transportation options to cities. And then we have Topi Tukanov from the Mapbox, senior designer at Mapbox, who's going to be giving a presentation on design for the future of transportation. So action-packed program. We'll have some time for some questions. And with that, let's introduce our guest. Charlie, welcome to Helsinki. Thanks all the way from Berlin, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, super excited to be here to meet the team and also talk about transportation, micromobility.
Nice. Yeah, great to have you here. I know you've had a day full of meetings, so meeting with our team and getting hands-on with Mapbox, and maybe for the audience here and the viewers, maybe you can sort of give an overview of Tier. Like, what are you all up to?
Yeah, so Tier is a micromobility company based out of Berlin. It's funny, I think you could say we kind of cracked the nut in Europe, like when micromobility became kind of like legal. Like, we just kind of expanded massively. We have 3 different modalities currently. We'll hopefully have more in the future. By modality, I mean we have the e-scooter, e-bike, and e-moped. So yeah, like just depending on what speed you want to go, we have an option for the users.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm personally a big fan of Tier. I use the scooters here around Helsinki, and it also feels like kind of everywhere I go around Europe, like I'm seeing Tier. So you have this sort of expanded across Europe, right?
Oh yeah, we have a pretty large footprint. I mean, Europe, Middle East. We've acquired 2 other companies that are based in the U.S. So yeah, we have a pretty large footprint.
Yeah, and so I'm curious, like with such a 3 different vehicle types and a lot of different cities, what are some of like the constraints that you're working with as a design team? Like, what are some of the challenges that you have to overcome?
Yeah, I think there's 2 main problems or challenges that we had. One was that, like, we started as an e-scooter company, so we were telling an e-scooter journey with regard to the map, like education, like various features, all based off of e-scooters. But maybe you're riding a bike, or maybe you're on a moped, or maybe one part of the city like forbids this vehicle type, but the other part of the city is like totally on board with it. So we initially had some pretty serious challenges with being stuck as an e-scooter company trying to provide other modalities and being like tied in with one use case. Over the last year, we've kind of scaled and we're able to tell a story based off of, like, you know, what vehicle do you have? What neighborhood did you start in? Yeah, like more contextual storytelling that is tied to vehicle types and locations. So those are like probably the biggest challenges, like leveling up, maturing as a company.
Scaling up to support those
exactly.
new products and evolving the product. Yeah. You know, you mentioned sort of like different parts of the city allowing different types of vehicles. there are these zones in tier that are, for safety, for regulation reasons, like there's limiting in terms of parking. What are the different zones that you have in the app?
Yeah, there's quite a few, and surprisingly, people don't really understand them. Like I've been staring at the map for 3+ years, so yeah, I'm exhausted looking at it. But the zone types, it's things like no parking, maybe mandatory parking, so like a space you have to park a bike or a scooter or moped in. We also have slow zones, so like the vehicle will slow down when you go in there. There's also no-go zones, so maybe like this one neighborhood is completely against having vehicles there, so we like slow them down. You can't park there. Maybe you have to pay if you end there. Those are the main ones right now. There's also like bonus parking to like distribute a fleet.
There's one right in front of our office actually, so I take advantage of that one.
Nice. So yeah, those are the main.
So it's a lot, and I think that's an interesting design challenge, I would imagine, because you have to, as you mentioned, like educate the user about like all the zones very quickly. You might have a tourist who's in a new city using the scooter for a first time. You have to very quickly communicate to them what these zones mean and how they can go about using your product the right way. So how are some of the ways that you've sort of experimented with that or iterated with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we for years we were tied to like simple polygons, and then when we moved on to Mapbox, we were able to unlock different like icon placing, or maybe like text on a line, or different experiments that we weren't able to do before. And that's super good, because what we've done with our research team is we came up with like a variety of icons that would represent these different zone types, and then ran like, it might be the biggest, I probably will get called out for this, but it might be the biggest research study that or survey at least that we've done, maybe like in my department, and got like feedback from, I think it was like 30,000 people or more, and I don't remember, but don't quote me on that, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble. But that was cool, because we had like a serious confidence in what we were showcasing on the map, and then that also gave us the confidence to like physically print these on more like educational material, and then to go as far as to printing them like in the vehicle UI itself. Yep. So the vehicles here in Helsinki, they don't have this UI, but the future of our vehicles, they do have the capability of like bridging the gap between the digital world and the physical world, because we can confidently show something on the map and then confidently show it in the real world. And if you're riding a vehicle, usually you don't open your phone, so it's good to like have something bridging the digital and physical world.
Yeah, that design language, you're able to experiment with that on the digitally, where it's really you can iterate quickly. You can experiment with that design language, but then when you go to stamp it on a vehicle, that's expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be the guy that someone asks, like, what is this? You know? Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that's great for user experience, because the language that's being used in the app, then like it's a familiar on the vehicle. Once I put the app in my the phone in my pocket and I'm riding, I have the same language in front of me on the vehicle.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned research and sort of experiments. What's like what's like a typical experiment or craziest experiment you and the team go out and like do user research with?
I mean, it depends on what we're testing and like the use case.
Yeah.
I think some of the more interesting things, it's like putting like we should go out and test like something when the sun's shining down straight on your phone. You try to do it, or when it's pouring rain, like try to do the same thing, or have somebody do it, or put your phone in a right to left language. Yep. Because I mean, like people read, but they don't really want to read that much when they want to go from point A to point B. They're in a hurry. So put your phone in like Arabic and send the user through a process. If they don't speak Arabic, like let's see if they can, execute a task. So yeah, it's a wide variety of experiments. We try to make things like really challenging and see if people can get to where they need to go.
Yeah, it's sort of like putting your product in like the worst case scenario, rain, bad weather, foreign languages, like that simulates, like, I know what it feels like to be like struggling to unlock. It definitely hasn't been a tier scooter, been another competitor's scooter, struggling to unlock the scooter in a foreign country. Like, oh, you have your phone out, it's uncomfortable. So like that research like really translates into a much simpler process.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And speed is really important.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's also helped us using Mapbox, because we can quickly test, iterate, like pretty much mock things up as much as possible, like what they would really look like in the real world. So we don't have to like lock up the dev team for, a month to get something. Like the design team can just execute, get confident data back, and then lock teams up to nail it.
So talk me through, go in a little bit more detail. Talk me through like that, like tool chain. What are some of the tools that you use as part of like your toolkit for iteration?
I mean, I think every designer, like Figma, first of all, and then after that, I mean, it's like the classics like Miro, Photoshop, Illustrator, and then some people on my team, they use like Framer or Protopie. We kind of let people choose what they want to use for the most part, but we're all on Figma, like 100%.
Got it.
But I think the main thing for us is like making things as realistic as possible outside, like on the street when the sun's blaring down, because it doesn't help to test like when someone's sitting in their bedroom and asking like, hey, can you please go through this flow? Because that's not really going to translate to like real data or like real information that we can build on.
Yeah.
So like getting it super real and making decisions based off that.
So being able to prototype and like then stand up and then go out into the sort of the right environment is pretty critical.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Okay. So, I'm curious, what is it that about Mapbox that has allowed you to like has contributed to the iteration?
Yeah, like I just mentioned, like being able to design quickly and confidently, getting user feedback, and then also Mapbox Studio specifically, like the tool itself, being able to, I don't know, like click on the most random element and change it just so we can do it quickly and get user feedback. I think it's really important in the micromobility industry, especially in like an upscale environment, because we're like moving super fast. Maybe the city changes the law like overnight because somebody got pissed or whatever. So we got to make decisions fast, like confidently. And Mapbox has allowed us to do that, because other tools, they take a bit more time, or you need to know JavaScript or whatever. Like not everyone on my team knows that. So it's nice to move fast and confidently.
Got it. So I'm curious, like what advice would you have for others in the room here or on the live stream, like design teams who are building products for transportation? Like what's the advice that you would have for them?
Yeah, I think get out and test as much as possible, and have like don't be afraid to approach people. Also, I know that sounds weird, kind of creepy, but like guerrilla testing, super cool. Know the product. Like I said, test it in the rain. Put your phone in a language you don't know, and try to execute like some flow and see how it goes.
Nice. Okay. So what is the next big thing for your team, and what's next for Tier?
Yeah. So we acquired 2 pretty large companies in the last year, and I think integrating more unique vehicle types that they have, like a cargo bike that Next Bike has, or whatever. And then also just, we've been in Europe, but now we'll be moving to other continents, and their rules, let's see what they have. So like it's going to be a challenging year, like learning new regulations and building for them.
Yeah, so international expansion is like definitely something that's like unique requirements when you're expanding internationally, and
absolutely,
and being able to like, I think it ties back to that point you made about like design iteration and being able to like wake up in the morning and react quickly to some sort of new demand or regulation or safety issue. Like that agility is really key.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I've been asking a lot of questions, so I want to open it up to the room that we have here and all of our guests here in Helsinki. So think about your questions. I also want to invite our viewers on the live stream to drop your questions in the comments, and we're going to go through those after the program here and try and respond to all of them. So please drop them in. So who has a question here in Finland? Yeah.
All right, thanks. So I just wanted to ask, I see from your presentation that you are an international company, so you operate in many countries. And I assume that there's a lot of diversity in how the roads are built in different countries. Like, for instance, here in Finland, we have very large sidewalks, in general, at least in Helsinki, but in other countries, they might be narrower. So does this diversity pose a challenge to your company for scaling?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very challenging. Like, we've built internal tools where maybe like a city manager can, I don't know, if they usually know the city best, right? So they can maybe block off certain areas or put like a certain zone type. We also get feedback from the actual cities, and then we have to maybe manipulate our data to like represent what they want. It's never going to be one size fits all. We do have a city and compliance team that kind of designs and builds for like city specific topics. Like, we're trying to make maybe one giant Lego for the whole world, but then we have the city and compliance team that jumps in and builds unique solutions. Yeah, it's a challenge for sure. Yeah, especially like leaving Europe, it's going to get even more weird, like interesting, fun. Yeah.
That's cool that you make that. I hadn't even thought about like that kind of self-serve aspect, giving the cities the power, to partner with you, with Tier, to manage their city. I mean, it really it's an empowering experience. That's pretty cool that tool exists.
Yeah, absolutely. I make this joke that it's like a pizza.
Uh-huh.
Like we make the base pizza with the sauce, and then you can put like
toppings.
Yeah, whatever, you can put pineapple on it if you want. Like, do whatever you want. But yeah, we control like the base. Yeah.
That's awesome. Another question. Tiago, come here.
So I was recently in Berlin, and I was very excited to see the e-bikes from Tier. How do you see e-bikes and e-scooters? Do they compete against each other? Like, what kind of users go for e-scooters or e-bikes?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were afraid that like one market would capitalize or cannibalize the other one. So if we launched e-scooters that eats the e-bike or vice versa. That hasn't been the case. It's usually different people. So like, for example, if you don't want to, like, I've literally heard this in interviews. Like, I don't ride the bike because I don't want to be sweaty to my job interview, so I take the e-scooter. Or I want to go further and faster, I take the e-bike. So there are like use cases where people switch. We haven't seen a large like cannibalization of the market. I think as a company, we'll just keep. I mean, people love the bikes, and the new company that we bought, they have a ton of bikes, and they're great guys. So we're gonna push bikes even more in the future. So yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you work with the cities.
Yeah.
So how is it like working with like the, let's say, government that goes at a, I guess, quite a bit slower pace than you do?
Yeah, it's a interesting stakeholder. Like sometimes I say they're some of the more creative people like that we work with, because they have like all these ideas for zone types or like whatever. It can be painful because like end of the day they do make the law, so we do need to like find middle ground. Yeah, it can be slow. It can be, if we can like come to an agreement, especially if the city wants to have like green initiatives, or they want to be like a 15-minute city or whatever, there's leeway, but there's always like one person in the team, like on the city hall, that's like totally kind of can be, have like super staunch opinion or whatever. So it's challenging for sure, but it's also like learning experience. Some cities love us. Yeah, some it can be tough, but I think it's been fun to work with them.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing about all the the flexibility, so that and as you go, I heard you talk about scale too. So as you go, you're sort of building into the core platform the ability to customize the experience based on, as you go city to city, you're going to have these people. Well, what about this zone? You're going to be like, well, we support that because 2 cities ago we added that feature. So being able to be flexible is pretty key.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, maybe one more question.
My question is, does the user experience differ depending on the platform? And if it does not, how do you keep the app on different platforms in sync? And if it does differ, how do you decide which features would go to which platform?
So, end of the day, the dream would be to have both platforms fully in sync. Sometimes because of whatever system regulations, maybe it's more challenging on one platform, so one might get ahead of the other. We won't release a feature on one platform and not have it on the other. It's a challenge. We also one guy on my team. He's like a killer Android developer, and his name's Gabor, and so he created at our company. Maybe you do it here, I don't know, but we do bug bashes where anytime we release a feature, we all get in a room and bash it, basically find problems, and then we jump on the other platform and we do the same thing, and then we find where they don't the concentric circle doesn't overlap properly. Then we have a problem because we don't want to lock up a design team that's only working for one platform. So yeah, we try to keep both horses running at the same speed, if that answers.
I'm curious, a little selfishly, I guess, but what about the maps? Have you been able to have those more cross-platform as a result of Mapbox, or have those always been cross-platform?
They've always been cross-platform. Yeah, maybe like I said, maybe one platform gains a little steam, but usually we try to keep them caught up.
Yeah.
But we would never let them run totally.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, Charlie, thanks for joining us. It was great to have this chat. I think hopefully shared a lot of insight with the group and on the live stream. Once again, reminder: drop some comments and questions into the YouTube channel, and we will get responses to those. And then I'm going to invite Topi Tukanov, senior map designer from Mapbox. There you are. To come up here and run through a discussion about design for the future of transportation. So let's have a quick round of applause for Topi.
Greetings, co-workers and strangers. Nice to see you here. You want to do live commenting on the slides, or should we just run through the pretation and then they can
I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah.
I think we're in good hands.
Thanks. Will asked me maybe a month ago if I want to speak at the event, then I said sure. Then he gave me the title, Designing for the Future of Transportation. Sounded grandiose, it is. And then I started thinking, what can I talk about something like this, something this big and maybe even vague, but still, I started looking into, selfishly, I went into my own portfolio to find inspiration. And then I realized that most of the stuff I see there are more or less transportation related. Transportation, and in my slides and my presentation, I talk about transportation, traffic, and movement as one single umbrella topic. But yeah, I've always found it super interesting to visualize, to kind of like, I see it as an invisible layer in the urban environment, in any environment, but especially in the urban environment, that you can visualize with maps mostly. I'm a map designer. I'm a map person, so maps are my thing, and that's I like to present things. And for example, the one on the left, I did a few of these accessibility visualizations, and I mean accessibility in a context of like how to get from A to B. That one compares different transportation modes, and it starts from one single point and then ends up on like multiple different locations. So the purple is car, and the green is bicycle, and the yellow is public transportation. So it's like a nice, like a fireworks visualization. And then the one on the right, I compared isochrones for different cities in Europe. And my favorite comment always about this was when someone said that they look like Pokemons, which is kind of true. But I find it super interesting how you see so many different things. You see the urban structure, you see the geography of the city. So basically the circle around it shows a 50-kilometer radius, and then the shape shows where you get. Yeah, I found these things from my own portfolio, and then I started thinking, so what could be? I've done this sort of things, and so what could I talk about? And then I came up with a few different points on what could be important in the near and distant future of transportation design. We've heard the concept of micromobility today, but in mapping, I don't know how many have heard the concept of micro-mapping. That does exist. In OpenStreetMap, there's always, in the OpenStreetMap community, there's always a debate on what's the accuracy that the map should be made at. There are some people who want to map individual flowers in a park, and then some people think that that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, but still some people do it. So we have the data, and we collect more and more and more data all the time, and not only through weird OpenStreetMap mappers like me, but through also automatically. Like I bet Tier collects their data, and I bet they do all sorts of interesting stuff with it. So there's more data and more accurate data. So the scale of the map, that map as we think of a map, it's changing all the time, and it's becoming more and more accurate. And this was a really good tip from a colleague, Owen, to look at Ed Parsons' talk about the future of mapping. And he pointed out that the scale will be probably more human. And I think Tier and micromobility in general is a prime example of that. All of a sudden, you're not interested in the road center line. You're interested on the curb. You're interested, like soon you'll be interested in like bumps in the curb. And that's a huge design challenge. An interesting one, but it is a design challenge. Maybe the individual flowers are valuable soon. So this is like a typical map you see. This is made by the National Land Survey of Finland. We're sitting in the center of it. It's very simplified for various reasons. But this is what many people see when they open up any sort of map. But then if you look at the same location and look at, for example, Mapbox streets, the data inside streets, there's a lot that we have but we don't always show. And that's like the biggest and the most difficult map design decision on what do you want to show, what do you want to leave out, when do you want to show it, on what scale do you want to show it, is it really relevant here? So, and that's, as a Finn and as a lover of Nordic minimalistic design, it's always difficult to add more stuff, but sometimes you have to do it for the sake of it. So you have to make some really tough choices when you're leaving out, even though no matter how valuable the data would be, or how much effort would be put into like collecting the data, it's sometimes the hardest decisions are to leave it out. Then moving from data and scale to the points of view. And in this context, meaning like how you look at the map and how the map is, and where the map is made. I think I liked how you already touched that set topic a bit, like how the sun is shining onto the screen. But how many in this room have ever made a website? Yeah, a few. How many have struggled with the mobile version of that same website? Yeah, exactly. Almost all the same people. So, like, life would be so people if no one would look at the maps on mobile. Like this tweet is about database in general. But the same applies for maps. Like, I would really appreciate if you could like take your screens from the office today and start looking at your maps only from those. Please. Designing for mobile is difficult. But to add complexity in transportation, it's not only mobile. Like something like here, yes, it's mobile. There's almost like a fixed place for your phone. But then you have something like Tesla, where the screen is it's almost like our screens in the office, but it's very different. It's much bigger. It's differently located from the user. So you're looking at in a different angle. You mentioned the sunshine. That could affect it. So the screen size can be anything. It can be a vertical, it can be a horizontal screen that people use for in transportation. So that means like that just to show how big the variety in transportation. It's really difficult to do like a good navigation map or a good transportation navigation traffic map. Only because of the screen variety that you have. And talking about points of view, north is not always up. Like that's how maps have been traditionally made, but that's rarely the case. Tiago liked this map because Brazil was on top. But yeah, things become difficult when quite often when navigating the view changes and it can change multiple times during your route. And it's not only where's north is north up, but then you add pitch. So you add another variable into the mix. I'm not even going to go into road hierarchy, which is every map designer's favorite thing. You see some road hierarchy there and looks complex, and I can assure you it's a really complex thing to get 3 levels of tunnels and 2 levels of bridges to make look right, and then make it understandable when you're driving at 100 miles an hour and looking at your screen. Like, what is this? Because no one looks outside of the window. They look at the map when they're driving, right? Then about the dynamic nature of transportation and traffic. If you think about something like weather, which is pretty dynamic, you can forecast it. Traffic, to some extent, yes, but not so much. This amused me a lot a few years ago when I saw this on Twitter. This is a German artist that took like this kiddie cart, filled it up with 99 smartphones, and then walked around the streets in Berlin to create artificial traffic jams. Because then Google read that, okay, there's plenty of phones on this street. So then people started diverging their routes. So this was like an artistic experiment, but highly amusing. And it also shows how dynamic transportation is. Like, if someone with a few or quite a lot of smartphones can do this, how fast things can change. Then already there you see the green, orange, and red traffic colors. And that's another thing. Moving on to traffic. If you look at this map, and I say to you that this is traffic map. So those are road segments, and the color tells you how much traffic there is on that segment. Each one of you probably has an individual idea in your head Like, what does that mean? Like, I bet that in Italy the traffic is slightly different from Helsinki. So, like, if you see red on the map, for us it's like this, like you see something on the road, and I've even heard like other Finns say, like, honestly, that if you're moving according to the speed limit, but you're still moving, but you see other cars around you, that feels like a traffic jam. But in many countries, you're not in a traffic jam until you stay put for 1 or 2 hours there. So it's traffic is very interesting topic from a design perspective. So for us here, the red one is are the reindeers, and yeah, it really depends on the context. I'm not even gonna go through how I took the rainbow color scheme here and all the designers in the room, like, oh, what? Rainbow colors. But yeah, the dynamic nature is one other thing which adds interesting complexity to transportation design, not only today but also future. And whenever you hear a presentation by a geographer, which I am too, highly likely that you hear the phrase "map is not the territory." Basically means that when we're making a map, we're not creating a one-to-one simulation of the world. And that goes back to the fact that we really have to decide on which elements we want to add to the map, when 3D adds value and when it doesn't, and what is relevant for the user and what is not. And because of these things that came to my mind today, the dynamic nature of transportation, the huge range of devices and screens that you have to design for, and everything else, that's why I find the topic very fascinating. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask if you could stay for a couple questions. Maybe we have, yeah.
This is not a planted question, although I work with Mel.
Not a planted question. I'm curious to hear from you what you think. This is something I've been thinking a lot about. I'm a map designer as well. So what do you think the future will yield for maps, given that autonomous vehicles are, I moved to San Francisco a while ago and I'm seeing them everywhere. And I often wonder, what does this mean for maps? Do you think we won't need any maps soon?
Yeah, autonomous is something I didn't even think about. Like, here you don't see them, so I didn't even think about, like, when making the slides. But that's a really good question. I think it might be my first idea is that the maps diverge more. So there will be these HD maps which won't be for humans. There will be very fine details of the environment, like a digital twin of the environment, and that's what the cars will consume. And maybe at the same time, the maps for us humans will become more of an entertaining thing that you can just look and enjoy while you're sitting in the car. Maybe something like that.
Yeah, a friend was recently driving or riding, I guess, in one of those autonomous vehicle services in San Francisco, a popular one, and actually saw Mapbox in the back seat. So they use that almost like a progress bar to show like what's the ETA to your destination and to make you feel like you have context about what's going on. But it's just sort of informational at that, entertaining. I think it's a pretty good observation. Maybe more questions, and a reminder to the audience on the live stream. We have some chat questions. Okay. Okay, yeah.
Okay, I guess for Topi first, from the chat, will the documentation be more readable and approachable for beginners in the future?
Documentation? Yeah. I hope so. That's what everyone wants. Who doesn't want a better documentation? And as the challenges become more complex, we definitely need more documentation. Yeah, for sure.
And then I actually have another question for Charlie that came through a little later, if you're up for one. So the question is, considering that there's been so much investment into the user experience of commuting and considering all the regulations, do you see a use case for Tier offering outside of the rental services, sort of a commuting service?
Does that mean like private ownership or public transportation?
I guess it could be either, honestly. More just exploring beyond rental.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's an appetite for that. We do explore things like that. Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I guess the last question from the chat would be, you mentioned Mapbox Studio during your conversation, but what are the other Mapbox services that Tier uses, especially related to logistics?
Because I'm in the design team, like I'm pretty much tied to Mapbox Studio. I don't know exactly what the other folks at Tier are using. But we've been using Mapbox on ops side for 3+ years. It's just recently become a consumer-facing tool that we use. So, but yeah, I can't answer that. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I happen to know. I mean, Mapbox Studio, you design the maps, and then from an engineering perspective, you put them in the Android and iOS apps using the Maps SDK. So that would be one of the products. But the connection between those, there's the Studio for the designing, and then the integration and like deploy distribution goes through the SDK. So I mean, those are 2 products. Cool. All right. Other questions maybe for either of our guests before we wrap up from the room here? Want to make sure that we have. Yeah.
So I mentioned that before Mapbox, you used something, I guess, because this just 3 years ago. So what was that? Is it like, I guess, Apple, Google Maps, like native, and what is the value you're getting out of Mapbox compared to those native offerings? Is it like just the development speed that it's more, you don't have to do different develop, the APIs is of course different, right? Or is it something else? And what are the pros and cons, and sort of what was your experience with those native suppliers versus Mapbox?
Yeah, that's a great question. I probably will destroy any future job opportunities, but we were using Google Maps for much of like polygon rendering, and it was not fast enough. It was very kind of clunky for the quick iterations that we needed to make. Like with maybe legislation changes overnight, we need to be quick. We need to test quick. Some of the limitations were like getting icons set comfortably quickly, clustering engines not being as dynamic as we wanted. So yeah, like just being able to move faster and test faster. I think like Mapbox hands down helped us. I mean, if you talk to my dev team, like it's performance, like loading a bunch of parking zones, loading a bunch of vehicles. It just like, I had a guy on my team super skeptical. We did a hackathon. He came out of it like completely, like he saw the light, So yeah, does that answer the question? Like it just on the Apple side, we never have had our product on Apple Maps. So you used always Google Maps on the yeah. That's like when they became paid, which probably yeah. On the Apple they became paid. You have to essentially like metal to keep. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, we never had our product on Apple Maps, and then I think from a design side, using Mapbox Studio, it's just much more user-friendly, like period. Yeah.
It makes me happy to hear about the performance, because the team here, the Mapbox team here in Helsinki, is responsible for a lot of that performance optimization. So kudos, Helsinki team. Well, cool. Thank you to our guests. I really appreciate you taking the questions. And to the viewers on the live stream, reminder, just subscribe to the channel, follow Mapbox on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And even after the stream, feel free to drop some comments in, and we'll go through those and get some replies. And stay tuned for the next Mapbox Unboxed event. We're going to be announcing that soon, and we're going to have a whole series of these coming up soon. So, stay tuned, and thanks for joining us today.